Bullshit.
The No BS Show is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/nobs. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. It's the No BS Marketing Show. I'm Dave Mastovich. Our guest today is Jonathan Potts of Robert Morris University. But first, let's hit the bullseye. Jonathan said he drinks a lot of coffee, so we're going to ask him where his coffee allegiance is. But we're going to first talk about two tribes who see it as a coffee war. So about 7 or 8 years ago, Dunkin' Donuts decided to do market research. And you'll hear me talk a lot about market research and marketing intel and how essential it is to put the customer and prospective customers at the center of your marketing efforts and your market research. Dunkin' Donuts basically decided to go across the country and look in different geographic markets, and they would go in front of the store. Someone that was coming in regularly, they would say, if I pay you $100 to go to Starbucks, would you do that? Then we'll talk at the end of the week. And then they'd go across the street to people that were walking into Starbucks and said, if I pay you $100 to go to Dunkin' for a week, could we then talk at the end of this week? And they did that all across the country, and they learned that the mindset of these two different groups was so passionate and significant that they said they were really two tribes. And this was really when you started to hear how the term tribe was becoming more and more prevalent. I know Seth Godin talked about tribes starting probably about 10 years ago, so they jumped on this and they said there was the Dunkin' tribe and the Starbucks tribe. And so the Dunkin' tribe was fine with being part of a group. They wanted to be an everyday person. They said things like, why can't it just be small, medium, and large? They would also repeatedly say, if I want to sit on a couch, I'll stay home and drink my coffee. On the other hand, Starbucks customers wanted to be seen as an individual. They wanted to be seen as a trendsetter. They wanted to be treated differently. The company decided that for us to compete in this marketplace, we need to call attention to that segmentation and we need to position by that segment. So Dunkin' began to really talk about how they were every man or every woman, and you were part of a group, and it was no frills, but yet still good coffee that you knew what you were going to get for a price. Starbucks continued their positioning of being the trendsetter, of being that third place that Howard Schultz talked about, work, home, and the third place being Starbucks. They have their logo, their cups around Christmas. Everything is eclectic and trendy. The two different segments, the Starbucks segment they found is more a higher level professional or management and a higher income, but also the creative artistic professions. The mid-level professional and mid-level manager and mid-level economically was more of the Dunkin' Donuts customers. So that's what segmentation is, and then positioning by segment. Dunkin' in the past 7 years has grown 36% market share for Starbucks, 24% for Dunkin'. They are the two major players, but still 40% calls themselves other. So that's what segmentation is. That's what positioning is. What tribe are you part of? And let's find out right now what a big coffee drinker, Jonathan Potts, Vice President at Robert Morris University, which tribe are you from? Either of those two or another one?
Well, I think if I had to choose between Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts, I probably am in the Starbucks tribe. I think just because, I remember going there when it first opened in Pittsburgh, and I do like their coffee, but I always try to go local when I can. I live in Brookline. There's a great neighborhood coffee shop there called 802 Bean. It's been open for about 8 years now. It's been a couple different names. Robert Morris, the place I like to go, is in Coriopolis called Anchor and Anvil. They also have a location in Ben Avon. It's sort of my office away from the office in a lot of ways, and it's kind of part of a nice little revitalization that's going on in Coriopolis. I think the national change, I do lean towards Starbucks, but I definitely like a good local coffee shop.
Well, one of the things you and I are going to talk about in part 2 of your guest visit here is about segmentation and positioning. So we will touch on how Robert Morris does that. But another rant post that I'd done, blog post rant on the show, was about how we like to have a certain level of distraction and noise. Like my go-to place is Rock and Joe right up the street here. And you have a couple go-to ones that you mentioned. And that is because if we're in the office and it's noisy, that same level of noise will actually distract us because we understand the conversation. But when we go to a place like Rock and Joe or your two places you named, you have the same amount of noises in the office usually, but since it's anonymous to you, it actually helps you with your concentration. I found that to be so interesting because I often wonder, why do I get more done there when it's not any less noisy than or more noisy than here? And that's actually why. So we're going to link back to that post too. But Jonathan, you've been Vice President of Marketing and PR for Robert Morris University. You and your team did an amazing job when Chris Howard came aboard as president and the whole inauguration, introducing him to the community. You've done a lot online with Robert Morris I want to talk about. You've really took a look at your segments and you positioned by segment, and that's what this episode will be mostly about. But Jonathan leads the university's marketing, media relations, government relations, executive communications, and crisis communications. In the first episode, he talked about how writing is a muscle and you need to really work it. And you have to be also comfortable with being uncomfortable, which is one of the things that I talk about a lot. And he talked about a phrase that I love, speak truth to power. When you are an executive or even not an executive, anyone that's in strategic communications, Jonathan pointed out, needs to speak truth to power. Very insightful for all of our professionals out there who are involved in marketing, PR, communications, sales, whatever. He talked about his mentors, Cal Fisher at Carnegie Mellon, and Teresa Thomas, who brought him to Carnegie Mellon, and Cal Fisher, who went to Robert Morris and brought him along. He talked a lot about how he goes about his job and how important it is to be able to communicate internally and with his peers and with the people in senior management, which tied back to our wedding crashers analogy. So we've talked wedding crashers, Starbucks, your favorite coffee places. Jonathan, welcome to part 2 of your guest appearance here.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Well, let's touch a little bit then about Robert Morris segmentation, because you've done so many interesting things, and you talked about it. When you took the job, you knew that Robert Morris was up and coming. They had changed the university status, and I remember the days from back when I was Chief Communications Officer at Duquesne University, and you were still on the journalism side. And back then, and I had trouble, you talk about speak truth to power, I had trouble explaining to the owners of the university and the board and the leadership team that there was no longer this distance between Robert Morris and Duquesne University, because for 50 years, it was Carnegie Mellon, Pitt, Duquesne were the big three. And by the early 2000s, even before the university status, Robert Morris had already, through Ed Nicholson's leadership, done marketing to get themselves to be thought of as that fourth. But then very quickly it became third and fourth. So, there's a pretty strong brand there. So you already sensed that in 2007 when you made the leap.
I did, and I think one of the things also that drew me to Robert Morris, and this is certainly still true today, is that there was a real strong emphasis on ensuring that students had good careers, not just that first job, but which is very important, obviously, as well, but that students are prepared for careers. And, sometimes people in higher education are a little bit uncomfortable talking about that. I mean, I certainly went to a liberal arts college, Westminster, where I got a great education. I remember being like one of only 2 or 3 people that went onto a career fair with some of the people from the career office, because it wasn't necessarily top of mind. I mean, people were lining up jobs and internships, but there wasn't a culture of being ready for a career. And I think that when the financial crash happened in 2008, 2009, and people were looking at the expense of higher education, they're like, I really want to make sure that my son or daughter is ready for a career. Or I want to make sure that I am prepared for a career if I have to change careers. And so I think that really, it's kind of like making a opportunity out of a crisis. I think that kind of enhanced the value of the type of education that we offer. And because I think that it really is a challenge for institutions of higher learning. How do we differentiate ourselves? I think sometimes we've done it through facilities. There's all kind of like the stereotypical climbing wall, or the lazy river. And it's just kind of like shorthand for the ways in which universities, by building things, have tried to like differentiate themselves and really just contribute to making themselves look the same.
I think that the problem that I saw whenever I was at UPMC, and I saw that healthcare was ahead of education by about 10 to 15 years, in that healthcare in, like, say, the early 90s struggled with marketing, and it was like this necessary evil. But then by the late 90s, healthcare had moved into where marketing was starting to become a driving force and the strategic communications were a driving force. But then when I jumped, that's why I jumped to the education side, because I felt then and believed and saw it come to fruition, was that education would need to start becoming more marketing oriented. But I still don't think it's pure marketing. To your point, a lot of universities still aren't doing that pure marketing. They are relying on building the things as opposed to more of the studying the art and the science and combining that art and science.
Well, and I think one of the challenges too, when you work in higher education marketing, you have limited say over the product, right? I mean, true marketing has influence over the product, right?
Yes.
The classic 4Ps: product, price. I don't have much control over the price. And traditionally it's not something that you don't have necessarily control over the product. I think that's one of the things, again, about Robert Morris, is that we do look at the product, the degrees, and are they relevant to the marketplace while still instilling kind of the traditional classical values, principles of education you need. We making sure you get a great job, great career, and also are still, a good citizen, traditional kind of liberal arts values. So things like cybersecurity, which is a relatively new offering at Robert Morris, but it's huge. It's really taken off. Data analytics, the online degree offerings. I mean, I think that's something that we've put a nice, a Robert Morris flavor to our online degree offering. So I think that's part of the challenge, is that largely what a lot of universities are doing is promotions and not thinking about the fact that you have to make sure the product stays relevant. And I think that goes back to a discomfort of thinking it as a product, right? Even that language, I'm sure there's probably faculty, very good faculty, Robert Morris or Carnegie Mellon, where I used to work, kind of cringing at the idea that it's a product. And maybe it sounds a little crass, but I do think that you're asking people to make a substantial commitment. Even if they're getting a scholarship, for example, they're still making an emotional commitment to a place. They're coming to live there for 4 years. If you're an adult student, it's where you're going to spend, a lot of your time, either virtually or, actually on campus. It's a commitment. And so you want to make sure that you give someone value and that you demonstrate that you're different than the guys next door. This region, this state, Pennsylvania, it's very competitive. There's a lot of great universities. It's very flattering to hear you say that about Duquesne. These are great institutions around here. We all have something different to offer, and we better make sure we demonstrate that to our prospective students and their parents.
We do have amazing, that's why the cliche eds and meds covers our region, because we do have tremendous healthcare and tremendous universities. And one of the things that I talk a lot when I'm asked to speak is I say how when someone is 17, 18, 19, 20, even 25, we're asking them to have this great understanding of who they are and what their life is. And there's so many good opportunities. I mean, there's schools that you can just rattle off that are good. So when I was saying that, I was more saying that when I had to speak truth to power, I had to say, like, there's no longer the segmentation in the mind of the consumer that there used to be. There used to be this thought that there was this tier in Pittsburgh of this one, then this second tier, then this other one. We kind of know them, because there isn't that much difference. That you can still have a great experience is what I should say. There's definitely a difference with every university. I don't want to imply that, but you can still have a great experience whether you're at Cal U or Chatham or Duquesne, and you really have to make that decision as best you can as a young adult. And a lot of times you're making on a gut feel when you came to a campus and you saw something beautiful on that campus, and you have to hope that instinct was correct. So it's a challenge for young adults.
Who's done some great work in this area is Gallup. And, full disclosure, Robert Morris is a partner with Gallup, but it started with Purdue University. So Mitch Daniels, former Reagan administration official, came in and said, how do we know our students are doing well? He said, placement, they get their first job. And that's important. We use Robert Morris. He's like, okay, what else? Starting salary. He's like, that's all you got? And so it turns out Gallup has years and years of employee engagement research. So what Gallup has found is that there's 6 experiences that take place as an undergraduate, and if you have those experiences, they correlate well to you being, engaged in your work, not just having a job that pays well, but being engaged, enjoying it, being beneficial to your organization, helping your coworkers. Employee engagement means more profits. I mean, it's not just touchy-feely. Engaged employees help an organization. There's measures of well-being that are directly tied to the experiences you have as an undergraduate, and so they have all this research. So they've looked, and they've several universities where one of them have had Gallup survey our own alumni, and asked them, "Did you have these experiences?" And also find out, are you engaged in your work? And I'm proud to say Robert Morris has a higher percentage than other universities nationwide of alumni who are engaged in their work, who are enjoying well-being in their personal lives, and an increasing number are reporting having had those experiences, which could be having a faculty mentor, being very active in extracurricular activities. And so I think that's one of the things college and university have to ask ourselves is, how do we differentiate ourselves and how do we know it's working?
Mm-hmm. That really is a step in the right direction with real marketing, because what you're doing there is talking about engagement. So you're talking about results. You're talking about you're really almost talking about one of our KPIs that we say everyone needs to use is Net Promoter Score. Would that person be likely to recommend Robert Morris to someone? That's all tied to their satisfaction, their engagement. But you're taking it even a step further with the Gallup data, because that's showing what we've done once we went into the workplace, and did we have these 6 areas covered for us in the undergrad. I think that's great stuff. The No BS Show is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/NoBS. Try a book like The Fifth Discipline, The Art and Practice of the Learning Organization by Peter Senge. It made an impact on me early in my career, still relevant today. You can download it for free at audibletrial.com/NoBS for your free audiobook. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android Kindle, or MP3 player. We are with Jonathan Potts, Vice President of PR and Marketing and PR for Robert Morris University. He's been talking about segmentation and the Gallup statistics and research that shows what helps with engagement and helps with people's results after college, which I think is a great way of looking at it. We've been talking about segmentation and positioning in both episodes with allusions to the Wedding Crashers, Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts. Let's talk about Robert Morris's big idea, and I'll tell you what I mean by the big idea. Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why, obviously hit a tone with many, many business people and cultural people and nonprofit leaders. And it said, you need to start with why, your reason for being. But as I read this, I thought, as a marketing thought leader, I believe it's only one of 2 questions that we have to ask as marketers. And the first why is your why, your reason for being. But the second why is their why, your customer's why, their reason for buying. So these 2 why questions are answered, and they won't have the exact same answer. So you now have to coalesce those 2 answers and turn those 2 why answers into one big idea. At Robert Morris, you've got so many messaging pillars for each of the different segments, but what is that overarching theme, that one big idea that combines Robert Morris's reason for being and your customer's reason for buying?
It's interesting. You mentioned Chris Howard, and I think one of the things that he came in and I think observed very quickly in his time in Pittsburgh, and he really understood how this applied to Robert Morris, was that we're big enough to matter, yet small enough to care. And so you hear him say that a lot. We went ahead and trademarked it, actually, so no one steal it. And I think what it means is that, it's certainly Robert Morris, we have the resources and the experiences that you'd expect to get at a much larger university. For the undergraduate student, Division I athletics, NCAA Division I athletics, great lab space, great faculty, these relationships with corporations. But you get to know your faculty, small class sizes. We have faculty who have, bought suits for students so they can go in that interview, for students who couldn't afford it, who are tireless promoters of their students' work, not because it gets them credit, but because it helps position those students. We did a campaign. You mentioned this a little bit ago. When I took over as vice president, I inherited a campaign that I managed to not screw up, which is our Changing the Face of Online Education. And it really demonstrated how the culture of Albert Morris University, that kind of high touch, as it were, that personalized attention, how we are able to provide that to students who are taking classes. They could be close by. They could be taking a class in Carrick, right? Or maybe they're in Michigan. They could be in California. They could be serving overseas in the military. How we can make them feel like they are on campus. Through like wellness coaching, which we provided. Career counseling. And so just that idea that we bring the resources to bear to launch you in that career, or to help you get that promotion, or to, get the skills to move into the C-suite, because we do offer, a range of, I'd say products again, but, services. We have a wide portfolio while still making you feel like you're valued, like you're part of a community. And I think that's what Chris Howard has discovered about Pittsburgh, and those of us who've lived through all our lives know it. We sometimes forget to appreciate it. But, you have these great championship sports teams, this world-class medical facilities, great culture facilities. Every great band comes through here. But it's still a city of neighborhoods. It's still a place where, where someone went to high school. It's a small, big city. It's a big, small town, however you want to put it. And so I think that's kind of a way in which we feel like we encapsulate the values of our hometown, even as we reach far outside our hometown.
Talk about your new center, the UPMC Center, which back when I was at UPMC, I used to love to try to do those kind of sponsorships whenever you can basically put your name on something that's going to be announced when there's a story and so forth, and you've got a campaign around this. Talk about it. So
we are going to open next year the UPMC Event Center. It's well under construction at our campus in Moon Township. We knocked down the Soul Center, which had been on campus for about 30 years or so. The UPMC Event Center is going to be home to our men's and women's NCAA Division I basketball teams, our NCAA Division I women's volleyball team. It's also going to be a conference center, so it's going to be nice meeting space for the airport corridor, which is a need that we recognize and a lot of other businesses out there have recognized. It's going to be a facility that's going to feature concerts, maybe some boxing, MMA, family shows. So I think it's going to be a true destination for the entire region, particularly for the Moon Township community and the airport corridor. We have a great relationship with UPMC. They're one of our title sponsors. Another great sponsor is Peoples. So the arena itself is called Peoples Court. And we did make sure that we were not violating copyright. I made such a point earlier of claiming our trademark, so we can call it Peoples Court. Morgan O'Brien, just as an aside, the CEO of Peoples is an RMU grad, very proud RMU grad, member of our board. So we're thrilled that facility is going up. I have a great relationship with both those organizations. UPMC has on-site healthcare for our students and faculty and staff, and so we cannot wait for that facility to be open.
What's the seating amount?
Probably about 4,500 seats. So it's going to be a nice size. I think it's going to be a nice niche in terms of the concert space. Mm-hmm. When we had the Kentucky game, I don't know, you may remember in 2013, we drew a first round matchup with Kentucky in the NIT because their arena was being used for the NCAA tournament. We played the game at the Soul Center, and I think we may have violated numerous fire codes that evening. It was just filled to the rafters, and we've had a lot of games like that where we just simply had outgrown the Soul Center. We're expecting our teams to do great things. We're expecting great things to happen. It's going to be a great resource for the community.
Exciting news, and I agree that whole airport corridor, you guys are onto something. Jonathan Potts, Vice President of Marketing and PR at Robert Morris University. Give us a tool for our audience, a tool that you use to help you become more productive or to help you communicate better that our listeners can benefit from.
Well, my team at Robert Morris has adopted a great project management system called Wrike, WRIKE. It's web-based, but we can there's apps for whatever device you have. It's really, really great for assigning work, having daily to-dos, for archiving projects, checking in. It replaces the multiple email chains. Who's doing this? Where's this project? I can see everything that's going on. You can have you can kind of give tiered access. You might have people in a different department that you want to be able to fill in, send requests, or to assign projects, but maybe not get into the weeds as much. So that's been a very useful tool. We've been using it, I guess, for about 6 months now, and I think it's very efficient. Personally, I'm a huge podcast fan, so I was thrilled to be on this podcast today. I consume a lot of podcasts, several of them, about marketing and PR. So in addition to this one, I would recommend Marketing Over Coffee. It's a great one. There's more of a PR-oriented one called For Immediate Release, which tends to be kind of long. That's a really good one. I read a lot of newsletters too. Scott Monty, who was formerly social media director of Ford, and he has I think Brain Trust Partners is his company now. He does a great little newsletter. So I do everything I can to kind of, keep abreast of, this is a huge burgeoning profession we're in. And there's a lot to keep abreast of.
So Jonathan, what I like to ask guests at the end is there anything you thought I'd asked you that I didn't ask you?
That's a really good question. I think we've covered a lot of ground. Is there anything you wanted me to get to that I didn't?
Well, I just want to make sure we give you a chance to talk about anything else with Robert Morris. I'm big on the region. So when we have a guest from anything like a university, or Leila Zarando was here for 412 Food Rescue, I'd like to make sure that they have a chance to really talk about mission and difference that you can make in the region. One
of the things another part of my job, you mentioned I oversee government relations. I also do a lot with community relations. I've been the facilitator of the last about 6 years now of an organization. It's more of a kind of a roundtable group called the Moon Economic Development Group. It includes people from governments and Moon, Coriopolis, surrounding communities. It includes developers, business owners, people from the university. We meet quarterly, and it's really information sharing, talking about what do people need? What amenities do we need in our community? What are the businesses opening up? How can we help? I think the airport corridor really is booming, and there's a lot of great communities out there. The airport, we're huge fans of Christina Casadas at Pittsburgh International Airport. What she's doing there, there's just a lot of energy throughout the whole region, as we know. But I think people need to understand there's a lot of energy in the airport corridor. We're very proud to be part of the Moon Township community, to be part of the airport corridor writ large. And I think that's one of the things Robert Morris has tried to do is be a good neighbor, facilitate growth, make sure we're not imposing our will. We're not the 800-pound gorilla, but that we are partners in the community. And that's another reason we're excited for the UPMC Event Center. We think it's going to be a true asset to the business community as well as to the residents.
Jonathan, thanks for being on the show.
Well, thank you very much. This has been great.
To our listeners, thanks for joining us for the No BS Marketing Show, brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/nobs. Over 180,000 titles to choose from. Visit masssolutions.biz for show notes plus additional marketing and messaging resources. Sign up for the No BS Marketing Weekly Update to receive timely, valuable ideas to improve your marketing and transform your message. Again, that's at masssolutions.biz. Remember, ask yourself, what's the big idea? And build your story around the answer. It's all about bold solutions, no BS.